Democratic leaders are in an uproar over Israel blocking the visits of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. The squad members had claimed they were visiting for diplomatic reasons, but this couldn't be further from the truth. They were going to use this trip to combat Israel politically, and Israel saw right through it. The left claims there is no proof, but there actually is. I'm your host, Jared Dyson, and this is the Closet Conservative Podcast. Some time ago, it was announced that there was a Democratic delegation that was going to visit Israel, and that two members of this group would be Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Both Omar and Tlaib have spoken out defiantly against Israel in the past. We even discussed this just a few weeks ago on the podcast, and we've even wrote several blogs about it over at theclosetconservative.net. Both have supported the BDS movement, which has caused some in their own party to rebuke them. Both Omar and Tlaib were barred from visiting Israel on their diplomatic requests. Democrats and media alike were quick to jump onto this, saying that Trump pressured Israel into denying them their visit. While it's true that President Trump did suggest that it would appear weak for Israel to allow them to enter, it was ultimately the decision of Israel to decide to allow them to enter or not. Israel cited both representative support of the BDS movement and their anti-Israel policy and remarks as reasons to deny entry. Over at the LA Times, the editorial board posted a piece on Thursday calling the ban a disgrace, and that Israel is just afraid of critics. Of course, they were quick to blame President Trump and call his actions disgraceful. The article seemed to indicate that the visit was going to be a friendly visit sponsored by a group called MIFTA, a non-profit group that is headed up by a Palestinian lawmaker. The authors argued that the Prime Minister of Israel should allow the group to enter to hear their points of view, even though they may disagree. The authors of the article so conveniently left out many of the fine details of the story, which will help you understand all of the story. First of all, let's start with the group that was funding the trip for the representatives. MIFTA has ties to terrorist sympathizers, has released multiple anti-Semitic statements, and has praised suicide bombers. It has considered terrorists national heroes and has promoted neo-Nazi conspiracy theories on its website. This certainly sounds like an innocent non-profit group, right? As you continue to look into the details of the trip, neither of the representatives were scheduling any meetings with any Israeli leaders. All of the meetings were being scheduled with Palestinian groups. One of those groups has been linked to multiple instances of propaganda that has incited violence against Israel and to multiple terror organizations that are on the U.S. terrorist designation list. So rather than meeting with one of the U.S. close allies, they would rather meet with terrorist organizations that are attempting to destroy our ally. In their paperwork to visit the country, both representatives stated that they were visiting Palestine, refusing to acknowledge the state of Israel. Palestine is not a country and does not exist because those in Palestinian rule have constantly refused to accept the two-state resolution that has been presented in the past. The fact is that these two representatives were planning to travel to Israel with ill intent, and Israel called them out on it. But wait, it gets better. After the initial denial, Israel was asked to reconsider Rashida Tlaib's request so she could see her grandmother. Tlaib suggested that this could be one of the last times that she may be able to see her grandmother. Israel approved her request on humanitarian grounds and was going to allow her to enter and see her family. But Tlaib turned down the offer, apparently having to agree to refrain from anti-Israel protests and promoting hatred towards Jews was just too much for her. Israel diplomats were quick to call out the actions of Tlaib, saying that apparently her grandmother was not as important as she claimed. Tlaib then went to the typical Democratic lines on Twitter with statements of racism. Last time I checked, Israel was not preventing her from visiting based on race, but rather her desire to see the destruction of Israel and promote those who share those same ideals. Ilhan Omar took to Twitter to vent her frustrations, where she claimed that the trip was nothing but the representatives wanting to see things for themselves and to find out what was happening. Of course, that was not what was happening necessarily in Israel, but in what they refer to as Palestine. Now, as I've said many times, Palestine is not an official state. Israel has offered a resolution. The Palestinians continue to refuse it. They will be unhappy with any solution that allows Israel to continue to exist, just as those supporters of the BDS movement suggest. Tlaib's friend, good old AOC, was quick to jump in with her squad mates as well. She suggested that only some Americans are allowed to enter into Israel, not all. For the first time in her congressional career, AOC finally figured something out. Israel is only interested in certain individuals. Only those individuals that are not out to destroy them. They're not interested in the violence inciting drama that would follow these representatives on their visit. Israel is not interested in these disingenuous claims, the claims that they wanted to visit to see things for themselves, while they're ignoring the Israeli leaders. Imagine political leaders that are trying to protect their country from those who wish to destroy it. My suggestion is that maybe the Democrats could learn something from this situation. Maybe the Democrats could see that a strong leader is not someone afraid to protect their country when someone is out to attack them. I remember when the United States used to have leaders that would stand up and protect America and American values. Even as recently as President Bush, decisions were made with an effort to protect American interests and values. The U.S. has placed individuals on terrorist watch lists, most wanted lists, and has denied entry to individuals with ties to terrorist organizations. What separates these representatives from those people that we just talked about, other than the fact they're members of Congress? These members of the so-called squad are supporting terrorist activities and terrorist organizations. They have spoken out with their hatred of Israel and their desire to see Israel destroyed. I think it's good for Israel to stand up and refuse entry to these individuals who seemingly hate them and are out to only destroy them. I've said it many times. I don't agree with everything President Trump says or does, but I think it's good that President spoke out on the hypocrisy that so many in Congress are refusing to call out and address. Over the course of recent history, Democrats have had no issues in calling out any instance that they didn't agree with in what Republicans were doing. They have cried racism, hypocrisy, bigotry, suppression, white supremacy, and any other possible label that you can think of. Republicans have cowered in fear far too long, refusing to call out the same in the Democrats. I am happy to have discussions about differing opinions and viewpoints. I think there are times that we can find common ground, and we can work towards solutions that benefit both sides. I do not see a reason to support these members of Congress simply because they are American members of Congress. As I was growing up, I remember being told to be careful of the decisions you make. Sometimes when you make decisions, you have to live with the consequences of those decisions. The squad made the decision to take a stand against traditional American values and specifically our ally Israel. They must now live with the consequences of that decision. These Democrats are the new Democratic Party. They hate Israel. They hate our borders. They hate our guns. And they hate anyone who doesn't agree with everything they like. At the end of the day, they hate America, and they are never going to change.
This is the Closet Conservative Podcast. All material copyright The Closet Conservative. Music courtesy of Greg Shields Music. Remember to subscribe to our podcast to receive all the latest episodes. We can also be found online at closetconservative.net or on Facebook and Twitter.